Alright guys, another step to your drafting process that I want to make sure you have access to is how it is you're actually going to cite quotes from your research. So theoretically, your annotated bibliography would have been a nice summary of your research. It would have been a overview of sources. It sort of would have driven the general trajectory of your research, and you would have been taking down quotes that you could then insert in your own paper. But the question is, how is it that you actually insert a quote? Because what I often see students take an entire quote as it is here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, and they will just simply cut and paste this quote into their own writing. So their writing would look something like, if I was writing in this space, they would have all of their own text, period, and then an entire quote, period. This here is not acceptable writing. You cannot start a sentence with a quotation and end a sentence with a quotation. In other words, you cannot just cut and paste a quote into your own work. Not just simply because this isn't even falling under our discussion of plagiarism. This is just simply not effective writing. You can't just take that and put it into your own work. Instead, what you do is we call inline citations. And I want you to consider this process as the process of weaving quotes into your own writing. So you'll take quote, your own writing, and together you will construct full and complete sentences. Now, the way you do this, there's several cases of how to do this. And these resources are on Edmodo as well. This is called inline citations in MLA format. And let's zoom this in as well. There are certain cases, okay, I'm just going to read this aloud so that it makes sense. When you quote an author in MLA format while you're writing, that's known as an in-text citation. Whether you quote directly from an author or you're paraphrasing the information that you pulled from a certain source, you must give credit to the source itself. And let me back that up for a minute. What that means, here are things you don't have to cite. You don't have to cite things like the civil rights movement occurred in the 1950s and 1960s. That's sort of general common information. But if you were quoting something, say, that says, in 1964, such and such event happened with such and such leadership, which is a reflection of such and such, and that came from a particular source, even if you're not necessarily quoting the source itself, even if you're changing the words and you're paraphrasing that information, that is still critically important that you cite that source. So in other words, you are giving credit to the source that gave you that information, that gave you that idea. We'll review that again when we do some of these practices. So to properly format these citations, you add the author's last name and page number, if that's applicable, of the quote or information in parentheses at the end of the sentence. So let's talk about these 5 cases. We kind of simplified it into this happens in 5 ways. Let's say you unmention the author's name in the sentence itself. Let's look at this example. Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. See the quotation mark here. Note that the parentheses come thereafter with the page number and the period outside of the parentheses. Here was the author, so therefore I only had to put the page number at the end. And you'll also notice again, here are this author's words themselves, and this quote, this phrasing plus this quote together constructs a full and complete sentence. Let's do case 2. If you use the author's exact words but do not mention the author by name at the end of the sentence, you use both the author's last name and the page number. Romantic poetry is characterized by the, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Wordsworth, 263. See how there's a space right here, but there's no comma, and you'll see the parentheses with the period outside. Both instances, case 1 and case 2, you see that there's a direct citation of the author's words. Now, let's go into case 3, because case 3 and 4 are often the more common examples, whereby you're not necessarily quoting the author, but the idea of, in this instance, romantic poetry, that didn't come from your brain. You read that, you learned that from a particular source, so you then give that source credit for that teaching and that instruction. So here's case 3. If you paraphrase the author's idea and mention him or her by name, you only need the page number, but you still need to cite the source. So here we go. Wordsworth extensively explored the role of emotion in the creative process. There is absolutely no quote here. This is a summary of what this author explored. So then we have the page number where that corresponds. You'll notice again, no quotation here, but the same credit is still given to where that information came from. Similarly, in case 4, if you paraphrase but do not cite the author in the sentence, you have to use both. Here we mention Wordsworth. Down here, additionally, poetry can be an outlet for strong emotions of those swept up by passion and creativity, very much influenced by the actual quote that you saw up here. But the phrasing was different. So we have to give credit to the author's last name and then the page number. Finally, much of your research occurred on digital sites that sometimes don't have authors listed or through organizations. So if you know the author, but there's no page number listed, or if it's a website, simply leave the number of the page off. So additionally, poetry can be an outlet for the strong emotions of those swept up in passion and creativity. Then we just have Wordsworth thereafter. Alternatively, if there is no author, then you cite the publisher. So for example, please don't write www.pbs.org. Instead, you'd write PBS, or Public Broadcasting System, right here in parentheses. If it was Crash Course in World History, or Crash Course in U.S. History, then we'd write this. Well, in that instance, you'd write John Green. But if it was from Khan Academy, then we put Khan Academy right here. Don't put URLs there. Don't put usernames for YouTube videos. You're using the publisher of the information if you don't have the actual author's name. So that's MLA citations. Now let's look at what that actually looks like. Now here's a practice version of this. Here are 3 quotes I took from the same source. From Alan Brinkley. Okay, I'm gonna take one of these sources, and I'm just gonna give myself some space. I'm going to what we're gonna do is we're gonna practice case 1 or case 2, and that's again where we are directly quoting from the source. So let's see what we can do. Oop, too many tabs open. Okay. I'm going to use a quote right here. It says, disillusioned with the ideal of peaceful change and cooperation with whites, an increasing number of African Americans were turning to a new approach to the racial issue, the philosophy of black power, right? So I'm going to now practice weaving together my words with the words here of the quote. And I'm going to pause for just a second. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to take this piece of the quote here, the disillusioned with the ideal of peaceful change and cooperation with whites. So notice first, I'm going to say that by the mid-1960s, many activists were, and now here I'm going to quote, disillusioned with the ideal of peaceful change and cooperation with whites, comma, quote, which led to the rise of the Black Power movement. Now, you notice, that was the end of my quote. I'm sorry, the end of my sentence. This is from author Alan Brinkley. It came from page 790. So using case 1, I'm going to now write the last name of the author with a space in between and the page number where that came from with the period on the outside. Now, one thing I have to note, do you see how this is a capital D right here? Oh, that needs to be changed. Capital D right here, and I made it lowercase. Because I made that change and that differs from the original text, I'm going to put that D in brackets so that the reader now knows that when I wrote this, I changed the structure of that particular word and that this D used to be capitalized. But let's take a look at what I just did. By the mid-1960s, many activists were disillusioned with the idea of peaceful change and cooperation with whites. And I'm highlighting my words here, so let's actually do that. Oh, where's my highlight tool? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so by the mid-1960s, many activists were, and then which led to the rise of the Black Power movement. Those are my words that are coupled together, and you see this is woven in between to make a full and complete sentence. That is a proper inline citation. Now, let's say I didn't want to actually quote it. I just wanted to use the general idea, or that's where I learned where the beginnings of Black Power came from. In cases 3 or 4 from your packet, so a quick review here, those are the paraphrased versions. Here, I'm just going to simply write this in my own phrasing, my own explanation. So perhaps I would say simply here, by the mid-1960s, many civil rights activists had tired of the violence and continued discrimination they faced, particularly, that's too far off. Let's just say, ultimately leading to the rise of the Black Power movement. Now here I've paraphrased, so now I'm going to just simply explain now where I got that general idea from, right? So now there's no direct quote, but now it's going to actually have a general same context that was coming from the original quote. So those are our inline citations. The way that the final step of this process is that when you have these inline citations, what you're ultimately going to end up with is, come on, word, there we go. Okay. You're ultimately going to end up on the very last page with a works cited page. On your works cited page, you will have nothing but your MLA citations. So you'll have a list here of all of the MLA citations so that when your reader is reading your paper and they see things like, there we go. When they see things like this listed in your paper, then they'll see at the very end your works cited page and they'll say, oh, okay, Alan Brinkley, that's where they quoted that from. That's inline citations. Shoot me an email if you have any questions about that. Throughout your drafting process, please know that you do not have to have direct quotes, but I should absolutely be seeing those inline citations throughout the paper.